Boker Tov Gavin. Ma Shlomchem. Oh, there's more tovs than lo ra after an exam. That's pretty good. But I'm going to make certain you feel better. All right? You're going to feel tov me'od. Look at the screen. Look what I have here. We're going to sing. Remember I told you that we would sing? We're going to sing a story that is, you have it on page 13 of your syllabus. Page 13 of your syllabus has this song. Not the textbook, but the syllabus. Okay? Page 13 of the syllabus. And I gave it to you there in transliteration because the place where I obtained this song had it only in transliteration. And then I could listen to it on a tape, but that was all. And so I sat down last night and said, well, I've used this in transliteration long enough. I need to put it in Hebrew letters so that students can see it better and learn how to read Hebrew. So on the slides, I have it in Hebrew letters so that you can look at it. That also produced some problems because there's some poetic, modern usage here that even my modern dictionaries in Hebrew could not explain to me why the transliteration read the way it did. And I listened to the tape again to listen to the sounds. I know what it means, but sometimes the words are kind of awkward. Let me walk through these words with you. The name of the song is Lo Bayom Velo Balayla. And the velo is because this is a modern Hebrew song, so we use modern Hebrew pronunciation for it. And it begins with Lo Bayom Velo Balayla, which means not by day and not by night. And then Cheresh Eitze Li Atayla. Everyone repeat that. Cheresh Eitze Li Atayla. And that means quietly. Cheresh is quiet, quietly. I'll go out. Eitze Li is I'll take myself out. Atayla is for a stroll. It must be poetic. I put a star beside it because this exact form is not found in any modern Hebrew dictionary. I have two large ones. One is 8 volumes, and it still did not have the spelling, so it must be poetic. And then Lo Vahar Velo Vavika is not on the mountain. You've had the word har, mountain. And you've also had the Beth preposition, and it's on the mountain, and not in the valley. You've heard of the Becca Valley. Well, Becca means valley. The Becca Valley is saying the Valley, because that's the name of it. All right? And Lo Bahar Velo Babika means not on the mountain, not in the valley. And Shita is an acacia tree. And the acacia tree in Jewish folklore is a tree that is a wise tree, and that if you listen to it, if you sit beneath the Shita tree, you can gain wisdom. It's kind of like the Greek concept of the oak, the diviner's oak. And so the Shita is there. And Omda is a feminine form of a participle of Ahmad. He stood, so it's she stood, so it's the Shita, which is a feminine. The oldest Shita tree is standing. And Shita is the acacia because of the Kametz Hatuf. It's a Kametz in a closed, unaccented syllable, so it's pronounced Omda. Sham, there. Atika is a borrowed word. It's a form of antique. Antique, and the N or noon is assimilated into the tau. So it's actually antique. Becomes Atika. And it means ancient or old. The reason for the arrow is that once you sung through these 4 lines, you repeat the last 2 lines. And then it moves on to Vehashita Potra, again the Kametz Hatuf, Hidot. And here's the acacia tree solves. Pater is the idea of solving, he solved, and Hidot is riddles. It's a biblical word. Umagida hi atidot. Umagida is a participle meaning to make known, to reveal, to tell. And he, you know that word, third feminine singular pronoun, she, referring to the Shita tree. She makes known. Atidot is the idea of treasures. And then eth, the object marker. Hashita the acacia tree, esh'al, esh'al. Esh'al means I will ask. I will ask the shita tree. And ani is I. You saw that. That was on your exam. Ani, I. And so we have I will ask the acacia tree. And mi wahi is who and who, literally. It means who in the world. It's an emphatic. Who in the world? Who? Who is it? Who will be? Yeheh is a form I could not confirm anywhere. I've never seen it before. I figure it has to be a shortened apocryphated form of yeh, and that's why I put a star by it, but that's what they use. That's yeheh is the way they pronounce it. Mi vahi yeheh chatani. Chatan is a bridegroom or groom. Chatan. And so chatani is my bridegroom. Who will be my groom? Who will be my husband? And then it goes on to say, ume'ayin, and from where, literally. From where yavo will he come? There's our word bo, to come or enter. Shita, so it's the idea, from where will he come, O acacia tree? And then an interrogative, hey. Hemipolin, the min preposition from. Polin is Poland. Will he be from Poland? O means or from Lita. Lita is Lithuania. Lithuania. Okay, a Litai is a Lithuanian. Polini is a Polak, a Polish person. Hamirkaba, in the scripture, this is the chariot. But in this context, it's a carriage. Ya'evor shvilu. The schwa here in modern Hebrew is not even pronounced. It's shvilu. That's why you have the transliteration there. S-H-V-I-L-O. Will he go his way? Ya'evor is to pass by, to pass over. Will he go his way is shvilo. And by chariot, or actually by carriage here. Or, O in the next line, uv maklo, or even with a pack, or a staff, excuse me, and his pack and his staff. In other words, is he going to be a rich man that will come by carriage, or a poor man that's going to be walking and carrying what he owns on his back? Ova maklo, uv tarmilo. Okay? Or will he come with his staff and with his pack, a pack on his back? And then we get on further, and it says, what will he bring me? Umeyavi li shilumim. Shilumim is gifts. Gifts. Will he bring me gifts? What gifts will he bring me? Heruzeh is the idea of beads that are strung on a string. Heruzeh, beads of peinim. Literally, this should be peninim. Peninim. So it's a shortened poetic form of pearls. Peinim or algumim. Now, when I looked at this, the translation says, or coral beads. Coral beads is actually almugim. Al-Mugim, the Gimel and Mem are reversed. But I listened to the tape again, and they were not saying Al-Mugim, they were saying Al-Gumim. Now that either has to be a poetic switch, but as I looked further, Algum is a red sandalwood that is considered very valuable. And it's used to make beautiful beads in the Orient. So I think it's a mistranslation by the translators of this song, because they had it in English and they had it parallel in transliteration. It's not coral beads, it's red sandalwood. S-A-N-D-A-L-W-O-O-D, one word, red sandalwood beads. And I think again here, is it going to be a rich gift or a poor man's gift? A rich man's gift is the pearl, but the poor man's gift is the red sandalwood. He may have even made the beads himself. Coral is another rich man's gifts. And I think the parallelism here was missed by the translator on that. So, umet toro, again, this has to be poetic because it does not match the way the Hebrew would normally be pointed in modern Hebrew or in ancient Hebrew. but it's the word, and what will be his looks? What will be his appearance? Will he be tsak? Tsak means pale. It means fair complected, white skin. Or will he be shachor, dark skin, dark complected? Will he have a Mediterranean color to him? Basically, she's saying. Or will he have a light color? Will he look like a European, or will he look like an Arab? Will he look like a Jewish person who has Mediterranean blood? What will he look like? This is the idea she's asking. Almanhu emodo bachur. And this is another place where it's poetic, and there's things that have taken place here that you normally don't see. And emodo with a hyphen there is telling me that it's a change, and you would not normally tie these words together, but they needed it for the poetic effect, I guess. But alman is the idea of a widower. A widower. Will he be a widower? The who is he. And emod is literally his standing, his position, his status. All right? Will he, with regard to status, be a widower or bachur, a bachelor? Now, I find it fascinating. In modern Hebrew, bachur is no longer used of bachelor. They use totally different words for bachelor nowadays. Both modern dictionaries I looked in refuse to use bachur for bachelor. But the Bible uses it for bachelor. So they used it out of the classical rather than the modern. Then on the last verse, you don't repeat the last two lines because there's going to be a special closing of two additional lines. Shema here is the idea of and perhaps. And perhaps, Shema. It's not the Shema that's in Deuteronomy 6:4. That's spelled with an ayin on the end, not an aleph. It's Shema, perhaps Zakain, an old man. And in modern Hebrew, here they say Shema Zaken. Shema Zaken. And so it's like it were a segol, and it's like the accent were on the first syllable. And it's just the way it works together here in the poetry. Shita Tova, perhaps an old man, good acacia tree. Aslo Eshmeh, Aslo Oveh. Aslo Eshma, then I won't hear. In other words, I won't obey. If my parents marry me to an old man, I won't obey. I'll run away. Aslo Eshma, Aslo Oveh. I'm not willing. I will not consent, is the idea. I will not obey, I will not consent. Omer la'avi, and the way this comes out is Omar lavi, and it's I will say to my father, Hemiteni. Hemiteni means kill me. Kill me. Uvyad zaken al titneni, but do not give me into the hand of an old man. All right? And then she finishes off her song by le raglau, and in the modern Hebrew it says le raglav, efol. I will fall at his feet weshaken and kiss them. Okay, I will fall at his feet and kiss them. And weshaken is not a normal form either. I struggled with that one. Finally decided to put a star beside it. It's close, but it has to be poetic. Ach is the idea of, the translation gives but it's the idea of only. And it's a very emphatic. Only not an old man. Only not an old man. Ach lo zaken, ach lo zaken. Now, well, let me sing it through for you. You can listen to the tune. It's an easy tune to pick up, and see if you can then follow along when we get. What I'll do is I'll sing the first verse, and then I'll sing it a second time so that you can join me the second time. Lo vayom velo valayla cheresh etzeli atayla. Lo vahar velo vavika, shita omda sham atika. Lo vahar velo vavika, shita omda sham atika. Got it? Let's try it. Lo vayom velo valayla, Cheres etze li atayla, lo vahar velo vabika. Shita omda sham atika, lo vahar velo babika. Shita omda sham atika. Let's try the second verse. Vehashita potra hidot, umagida hi atidot. If hashita esh al ani, miva mi yehatani. Et hashita esh al ani, miva mi yehatani. Ume ayan yavoshita, hemipolin o milita. Hamerkava, let's start that again. Hamerkava yavor shvilo, ove maklo uvtarmilo. Hamerkava yavor shvilo, ove maklo uvtarmilo. Umayavili shilumim, cheruze penim o algumim, umatorozach o shachor, almanhu emod o bachur, umatorozach o shachor, almanhu emod o bachur. And then the last verse, remember we're not going to repeat the last two lines. I'll bring up another slide for the last two lines. Shema zaken shita tova, azlo eshma, azlo over, omar le'avihem miteni, uvyad zaken al titneni, omar le'avihem miteni. Uvyad zaken al titneni, leragla vepol eshaken, achlo zaken. And you really joined in on the last line. You got that one. I got to get the tape out and figure out how in the world they got the meter right on that third line on that one. But it's a really neat song. It's got a catchy melody to it. You'll remember it. And let me just walk through here a couple of things, because there's a lot of words here that are biblical words and words that you should know by now and words which you'll be learning very soon. And having them in a song helps you to reinforce your vocabulary. All right? Lo means, Tom, yes?
Just a note, Chip, since this is a modern song,
yes,
their poetry is with sound rather than by parallel loops.
Correct.
So just make that note.
Yes, it is. It's by the rhyme comes through more so than it does in biblical Hebrew. Okay? Lo means what? It's written up there for you. Right? Right there in red. Bayom means by day, literally in the day, by the day. Velo in the modern Hebrew is and not. Balayala, in the night or by the night. Not by day and not by night. And that's the first line of the poem, and most Hebrew poems are known by the first line, just like a lot of English hymns are known by the first line. The next word that you'll know here that you see often is the third line, Vahar. Vahar, in the mountain. Remember, the comets under the guttural is accented on har. Therefore, you have a comets under the hey article. The comets remains when you have the beit preposition added in place of the article, say, in the mountain or on the mountain. Babika, the same thing. You have a pathic and a dogish in the following letter, means it's the article, the beit preposition, in the valley. You won't see this word vika in Hebrew very often. Other words are used for valley other than this one, but you will hear this in the news constantly when there's problems in Lebanon, because I'll talk about the Becca Valley. And just keep in mind they're saying valley, valley, the valley, valley. Shita, acacia tree, occurs often in Scripture. Remember, the shita tree, the wood of the shita tree, is used in the construction of the ark. and used in the construction of parts of the tabernacle. Amad, he stood. You've had that vocabulary word, the ayin, mem, daleth. Sham, meaning there. You've had that in vocabulary. And then as far as the next ones, you've had the third feminine singular personal pronoun he. We will be soon having, the next lesson, the direct object marker F. And you've had ani, the personal pronoun, short form. Anoki is the long form for I. Me, the personal interrogative we've had. And then as you go further, the may ayin, the may is the min preposition, but the aleph rejects the doubling dagish to assimilate the noon. Remember, that's your rule. And so it heightens the hirik under the min to eitzere. And then as you go further down through this, o means or, something I don't think we've had yet a lot of or mentioned very often. And then on this page, a lot of these words are not found very often, but you noticed the interrogative pronoun ma, in the third line, uma toro. And notice it has a pathic under it, joined normally by a makef with the following word, and note the dagish in the first letter of the following word, which follows the same rule. The who in the last line is the third masculine singular personal pronoun he. Emod is actually from the amad root of he stood. And then on the last verse, tova, you've had that. That's the word good. It's an adjective. Here it is in the attributive adjective. It modifies shita. Shita doesn't have the article, so the adjective doesn't have the article. Shita is feminine, so the adjective is feminine. Shita is singular, so the adjective is singular. Oz means then. It's one you haven't had yet, but you will have. Omer is a form of the verb amer, which you have had, he said. You recognize beyad, that's uvyad and, beth, by, yad. Why isn't it yad? Why doesn't it have a comments under it? Why does it have a pathic? Third vowel back, because this is in construct. So the accent doesn't come here. This is the construct form. Yad is absolute, yad is construct. So it's by the hand of, and then zakain we've had. Zakain we've had. Old. Okay, be old or old. It can be used as a noun and as a verb. And then I think the rest of these will eventually get to some of these at a later time. So there's a lot of vocabulary here, and you can build vocabulary with it as well. Later, when we run into a vocabulary word, I can guarantee that one or two of you will say, was that related to a word we had in that song? And you'll probably be right, because the sound will come back to you. So sing this over. Sing it to your wife. Sing it to your wife. We'll have to get that one verse on that one line figured out, though. If you figure it out, let me know. Chad?
How can we get a copy of the Hebrew?
What I can do is run off a copy onto a Microsoft Word sheet and then print it off and email it to you. Because I think I have all your emails. Pardon? Well, what I'll do is I'll put it in actually two ways. I'll put it on Microsoft Word. So if you have Bible Works, it will show, because this is Bible Works Hebrew font. And if you don't have Bible Works, I will also supply a Acrobat Reader file, a PDF file. Okay, Kyle?
How can we get a copy of you singing solo?
I hope you don't get that. I mean, oh man. You give your wife better than that. Your wife-to-be deserves better than that, Kyle.
Order the DVDs. Dr. Barrick, question?
Yes.
When you were going through pronouncing the words, a couple of the words, shita,
Yes,
acacia
shita.
tree, and zaken, you were pronouncing the accent on the first
Right,
syllable.
because in the modern Hebrew, in this song, in order to get the lilt, they've changed some of the accents to match the lilt. We'd say zakain, they're saying zaken. And that's just for the purpose of this primarily and for modern Hebrew.
So that's not even so much the modern Hebrew, but it's to...
It's part of it's the song, the context of the song. Right,
Meter of the song.
yes. Right, good question. All right, let's go over the verb, again, the verb conjugations. This is lesson 13, chapter 13 in your textbook. And we want to make certain you understand this because your worksheet number 13 will be due on Tuesday. And remember, we have 7 conjugations of the Hebrew verb. Sometimes these are called stems. Sometimes they're called conjugations. The Hebrew term is binyanim. Everyone say it. Binyanim. Binyan is a construction, literally. It is kind of a form word off of the Hebrew bana, which means to build or to construct. And so binyanim is the idea of conjugations. It's the idea of verb stems. Some prefer nowadays to refer to the conjugations as the perfect and imperfect and refer to the stems as the kal, nifal, hifil, hofal, piel, pual, and hithpael. Now, what did we say about the names of these 7 stems? Are they important to learn or not? Right, they're very important. All right, very, very important to learn. It's like those personal pronouns that you want to memorize. You want to memorize these names. And it would help you to memorize the name spelled in Hebrew as well as the transliteration. And the spelling in Hebrew is right up there on the screen. The pa'al and the nifal, etc., as you go down through that list, are the names, and you have them also on page 92 of chapter 13. You have a chart of Hebrew verb conjugations, gives you the traditional name in the left-hand margin, tells you the Hebrew name in the second margin, the action in the middle margin, and the linguistic name in the right-hand margin. You notice the linguistic names are ones that are used in all of the Semitic languages with various variations depending on other verb forms that are available in different languages. But they're German. Grundstamm means the foundation stem. That means the ground form of the verb is the kal. The N-Stamm is the stem that has an N prefix, the nun. The H stem is the He stem, the H of the Hifil. The Hu stam is the Hofal. Remember, it's because it's a Kametz Hatuf that is called Hu stam. And then Doppelungsstamm is literally doubled stem because the middle letter of the root has a doubling dogish in it, the dogish forte. And then the Doppelungsstamm with mit-u in the German, mit-u, is the doubled stem because the D stem is actually the same as the piel, and the du stem is the pu-al because you have the u sound in it. All right? And the dt stem is still Doppelungsstamm mit the tau infix. So you have this infix of a tau that is there. You have hith as part of the name, hithpael. Now, one caution. We have intensive down here, but I told you that intensive, in fact, in future editions, can be put in double quotes. And we're going to highlight even more so. The piel, pual, and hithpael are not truly intensive in their entirety, in spite of the way they've been taught for generations. If you later, when you get into Hebrew 3, the third semester, even next semester, when we get into this deeper, you will find out that it is more causative than it is intensive. And by causative, as I said the other day, it's a factative, which means you bring something or someone into a state or condition of being something. Whereas the true causative of the hifil and hafal is to make someone or something do something. So action is the result of the true causative. The piel pual in the partial causative is a condition or state that is caused, not an action. And it is used more often that way. In fact, it's very seldom intensive in reality. And most of the textbooks nowadays show that and do it. And we maintained this for years as intensive in our textbooks, and we decided that we're going to have to do something a little bit different in order to make certain that students aren't always trying to translate these with some intensity to it when it really doesn't belong there. So that'll be altered in the final revisions of this. Okay, so that's why I have up here intensive and double quotes / factative for the PL, PUAL, and HIF-PAEL. Let's pronounce these names together. Cal. Cal. And the form is PAAL. PAAL. Okay, Nifal. Nifal. Hifil. Hifil. Hofal. Hofal. Pial. Pial. Pual. Pual. HIF-PAEL. HIF-PAEL. All right. Now, remember we used this chart the other day to help you organize them again by another methodology, visualizing. In case you're a visual learner like I am, you'll create all kinds of charts to try to help you remember the relationships. And so sometimes we don't think linearly. We think in blocks or groups or circles. That's why I draw designs on napkins, or I start to diagram out what I'm going to say, or have a sermon or whatever. I start off with arrows and circles and boxes, and I write all over the place, and I connect things here and I connect things there, because I'm a visual learner. I don't automatically think linearly in the Western form of logic. So this type of diagram is given to try to help those who, like me, are more visually oriented, to show you these orientations, these relationships in a little bit more visual fashion. And so you can see there the names as well. The regular verb, remember we've gone through this, and we find out that forms, except in the third person, are derived from the personal pronoun, part of the personal pronoun, being added as a suffix to the root word to form the verb. That's why this is often called a suffix conjugation verb. A suffix conjugation verb. It's the verb that takes suffixes. They're not prefixes, they're suffixes. So you have verbs like mashal, pakad, he visited, he ruled. Mashal is he ruled, pakad, he visited. Okay? So let's go through and pronounce these. I'll pronounce them. We'll go right to left, mashal first, then pakad, as we go down the line, and you repeat them after me. And by the way, note, as a result, I think John asked a question, or Eric, one of the two, asked a question about the pointing that was on this chart on Tuesday. I've changed it. It should have the schwa, as it is in the book, down there for the second masculine, second feminine plural forms. A schwa under the mame and under the pay. All right, let's pronounce these starting at the top. All right. Mashal. Mashal. Pakad. Pakad. Mashallah. Mashallah. Pakeda. Pakeda. Mashalta. Mashalta. Pakadta. Pakadta. Mashalt. Mashalt. Pakat. Pakat. Mashalti. Mashalti. Pakadti. Pakadti. Mashalu. Mashalu. Pakadu. Pakadu. Meshaltem. Meshaltem. Pikadtem. Pikadtem. Meshalten. Meshalten. Pikadten. Pikadten. Mashalnu. Mashalnu. Pakadnu. Pakadnu. And notice there that at ta, the second person masculine singular personal pronoun, ends in ta. Both forms end in ta. And so therefore ta is the end of the verb. That's how you say you ruled. In English, we say you ruled. Some languages say ruled you in that order. Hebrew does it that order. Hebrew is verb, subject, object. So you'd have the verb ruled, and then you'd have you. And so in the form, they put it then on the end of the verb as well. And so mashal, ruled, ta, you, means you ruled. Mashal ta, you ruled. Second masculine singular. Notice the at, the second feminine singular. It has a schwa under the tau, and so you have a schwa under the tau on the suffix of the verb. Notice ani. Ani has a hirik yod. The first common singular of the verb still maintains the tau in there as a helper, because if you put it mashali, it means something totally different. So to keep it as a verb form, they put a tau in there to help out. but still the heroic yod suffix. The heroic yod suffix occurs only in the first common singular pronoun and only in the first common singular verb. The u on mashalu is the common plural, and there is no equivalent pronoun to match that, because remember, it's heim, heima for the masculine, hein, heina for the feminine. And then you have atem, notice the tem, you have the tem ending on the verb, second masculine plural. Aten, second feminine plural, you have ten, second feminine plural on the end of the verb. And nachnu or anachnu, the longer form, the nu ending occurs only on the first common plural. And you know the difference between the third common plural and first common plural because of the noon. The noon is what makes the difference. All right? The noon makes the difference. The verb roots are normally 3 letters. We call this a triliteral root system, which means 3-letter root. And so you count them off. Mem, sheen, lamed. Everything else is extra. Pei, kof, daleth. Everything else is extra. That tells you then that the noon is part of the extra and belongs with anachnu and nachnu. Okay, questions? Yes, David.
The second person plural feminine.
Yes.
It says at 10. Is it
At 10.
Is it so?
It's also attain, and it's also attaina. All 3 forms are used. But for the verb form, they use the atin form. Okay? Yes, Scott.
How come the A dropped out of the second masculine singular as opposed to the others that stayed to the endings?
The hey in the second masculine singular, where?
On the noun or on the pronoun form, it's Aleph, hey, Aleph, Tau, hey, and then when it gets to the verb form, the hey is.
Okay, it's not the comments that drops off, it's just the hey. All right? The comments, the hey is just virtually a silent letter. And so there's no need to put it on. Plus that, if you have a comma's hey on the end of a verb, it means something totally different. The comma's hey on the end of a verb is either a third feminine singular, like you see there in mashallah, or on some other verbs it has another meaning entirely. So to avoid confusion, it is never put on there. That's the short form. And if you remember right, remember there was an alternate form for atah, and it was merely this without a hey. And that's what is used. Okay? Even though atah with a hey for the personal pronoun occurs far more often than this shortened form. Okay? Other questions? Other questions? Yes, Eric.
Eric, when you're trying to get the big picture, so we're talking about conjugating verbs, and to do that in Hebrew, you take the 3-letter root and you add suffixes, prefixes.
For the perfect
vowels.
of that verb, you do, yes. You
so,
add
So
suffixes.
those were 7 categories of conjugations?
Right, this one is the cal only.
And this is just one really.
This is one of those 7.
And it only has suffixes.
Yeah, but in all 7 conjugations, they all have a perfect form of the verb, and all of those perfects are all suffix conjugation. In other words, here's what we have in Hebrew. You have 7 stems, sometimes called conjugations. And those 7 stems, every one of them occurs with 2 verb forms. And the first of those verb forms that we're talking about is what we call the perfect. Another name for it is using katal. And katal is just pronouncing the verb. Katal is pronounced the verb. Pakad, katal. In fact, it's using the verb for to kill. Katal, he killed, as the name, because that's the one that was used in the paradigms most often in the past. And so what we're learning now is one of the 2 verb forms that is found in all 7 stems. In other words, there's a PL perfect, there's a PUAL perfect. Every one of these conjugations has a form that is called the perfect. And in all those perfects, you have exactly the same suffixes. That's why if you memorize the cal perfect verb, the regular verb, this is called regular because it has no weak letters. There are no gutturals in it. There are no silent letters in it. Every one of these consonants in pakad and mashal are strong. All right? So it's called a regular verb or a strong verb form, called both. And that if you memorize this, you have the regular form, of the verb in the cal. Perfect. But it will, all you'll do, for example, let me do this very quickly. If you go to the P-ale, for example, instead of mashal, pakad, we have what? Remember the name is P-ale, so what will we have for mashal? Mishael. All right? What will we have for pakad? Picade. All right? And as you go down through that, you will then inflect it. Every form is going to have the same suffix as you go down. All right? And there'll be various changes in vowels in the main part of it, but it'll always be recognizable. It'll always be recognizable, but they all take the same suffixes. Okay? Yes?
Like the word shamer.
Yes.
We have it here in the cow.
Correct.
Junction. Is that word only a cow word? Is that word ever a kill or?
Is shamer ever found in a piel? Yes, it is. It's found as she mare.
So they're not types of words or uses how the words are.
They are types of words. They are usages of the words. They're different usages of the words. Okay, and we'll get to those later. We'll define all these later in more detail. But what you need to learn now is memorize this form. Remember, I gave you 4 verb forms, 4 root verbs. Someone repeat for me, what verbs did I tell you to memorize in the pointing here? Say it again. Katav. Okay. Katav, he wrote. What's the second one? Katal, he killed. Shamer. Okay, Shamer, he kept. And Malak, he reigned or ruled as king. Those are the 4 you're to memorize. And all you have to do is, just like you have here with Mashal and Pakad, all you have to do is substitute the 3 root letters for those root letters, and they're all the same. All right? They're all the same. Watch this. Let's take, for example, let's take the third common plural. Okay, we have mashlu, padku. All I have to do on this is remove all of these, you see. And remember, since this is going to go internal, I have to change it to an internal form, not a final form. The main thing I know about this in third common plural is every one of these is going to end in a shurik. The shurik is your clue that's third common plural. All right? What's the next thing I do? Well, it has a ma with a metheg. Mal, right? Malku. Okay? Malku, and then we're going to have katvu, and we're going to have katlu, and we're going to have shamru. They're all pointed the same.
Any other goes to a comma? It's because there's a schwa in front of it, you can't have 2 schwas in a row, and that's the best.
It's because it is one of the governing vowels of identifying the cal perfect. It's retained because it helps to identify the cal perfect. Okay, it's retained. Like I said, there are changes. You saw the pathic change to a schwa, right? The pathic changing to a schwa, you lose one of your characteristic vowels, right? But one of them is not going to change. Enough is going to stay the same that will never change, that you can identify it at sight, regardless of the changes that have taken place. John?
The first vowel in malak was a pathic. Is it only a pathic in third masculine singular? Or is it all? You had written it before with 2 pathics.
That was just an error then, if I wrote that way. That was a typo. If you can call a typo writing with a pen on the board. It should be a comments. Okay? All right? All right? So you see what you're doing? All you're doing is you're taking those 3 root letters. The 3 root letters represent your meaning of the verb. And then you point that with the vowels in order to get the sound that produces the words that mean, like here, they wrote they killed, they kept, they reigned. Okay? The suffix is the key. The suffix is the key. So please go through and memorize this. It is very, very important and significant. Now, in the time we have left, rather than take you through this right now, I'll come back to this on Tuesday, but let me take you to one thing to try to get this into your minds. There's a difference in the verbs in Hebrew between what we call the perfect, and remember I said there were two verb forms? One is the imperfect, perfect and imperfect. Now we translate the perfect just for the purposes of learning. It's pedagogical. We translate it as a past tense. But it can be translated present tense, past tense, or future tense. Time is not an element in the Hebrew verb. There's no such thing as a past verb, a present verb, a future verb. All those things are determined by context and context alone. It's kind of like Chinese. Chinese, you just have a verb, and if you want to say past, and you add another word that tells you it's past, context tells you. It's not inflected. The verbs are not inflected for time. The same in Hebrew. Verbs are not inflected for time. But they are inflected to try to give you the idea that is behind the verb. And the perfect idea is a simple fact. It's a simple fact that an act or a state has occurred or is or will be, and it looks at the action as a whole, just backs off and looks at the big picture. Okay? It looks at that as the complete picture, but not completed. Completed means finished. And that's something that's determined by context, not by the form of the verb. So I've given you an example up here from Judges 5:26. You know the story of Jael, and you know the story of Sisera, and how Sisera had done battle with Deborah and Barak, and how he had fled from the battlefield exhausted, and he came to the tent of Jael and sought refuge, and she allowed him to enter the tent. She gave him some milk to drink, and then he lay down on the floor of the tent to go to sleep, and she covered him up, and when he was asleep, what happened? You know what happened. We're right near Hollywood, and in Hollywood, they make movies. And when you make movies, you have a script, and the script tells the camera what to do, and tells what you look at, and tells what sounds you're going to hear. It tells you about sound effects and the visual effects. The Hebrew tells you about visual effects. It helps you to visualize what's going on. The perfect just says, this happened, or it is, or it will be. Simple statement of fact. That's all it is. Simple statement of fact, looking at it as a whole, without breaking it down into its individual parts or the process of the action. The other verb we'll learn later, the imperfect, does look at it internally and looks at the process of action. And so if you were filming this scene and you follow the Hebrew as your script for filming, when you have a perfect, you don't show the action. When you have a perfect, you don't show the action. When you have an imperfect, you show the action. All right? So what do you have here? Yadach, her hand, la yated. The yated is the tent peg. And by context here, her right hand is going to pick up the hammer, so it's her left hand. With her left hand, then, yadach la yated, to the tent peg, tishlakna. That is an imperfect verb. So the camera is going to be on her left hand, watching her hand go. You'll see it on screen. You'll see her hand move, and you'll see her fingers grasp the tent peg and grip it and hold it. And then it says, Wiminach, and her right hand, lehalmut emelim, to the, and I don't have a hammer up here, I'll choose this here, to the mallet, to the hammer of the workman. And so the film, again, because the verb that was used was an imperfect, and it's understood with the next as well, then the camera's going to show her right hand move to the hammer and pick it up. And then it goes further, though, because at that point it changes. Wehalma. There you have exactly what we're talking about here on halma. We had it here, katlu. If I put a ah here on the end, it's third feminine singular. These are all perfect verbs. They're all kal verbs. Kal, perfect, third feminine singular. And move to a perfect. Why? Because at this point is when we're told that she struck halma. Wehalma, she struck Sisera. Maheka, she crushed Rosho, his head. Umachaza, and shattered. Wehalpa, and pierced. rakato, pierced his temple. Now on modern film, on modern TV and movies, they want to show you all the blood and gore. They'll show you the gore scattered and splattered all over the camera lens and everything else. You get covered with it visually. That is not the way the Hebrew treats this. At this point, you've watched, the camera zooms in on her gripping the tent peg, picking up the hammer, and you watch as she places the tent peg on the temple of Sisera, and then the camera zooms back up to the hammer, and you watch that hammer start coming down, and it does not show what else happens. All you hear is that dull thud and then a crack like a ripe watermelon splitting. All right? They do not show the temple being impacted and the tent peg entering the temple. They don't show the spattering of blood. They don't show the facial contortions of the head as the skull changes shape when it cracks. They do not show a slow motion like on CSI of how it then through the brain material and then on down 3 inches into the soil of the tent floor. All right? The Hebrew perfect merely says it's a simple fact that it happened. And the very fact that you have Wehalma, Mahaka, Umachatsa, Wehalafa, that repetition gives you the sense of urgency, the sense of action, the sense of something happening. It's verbalized, but you do not get a full picture of the spattering of blood, the splitting the skull, and everything else. Because that's not the purpose of the perfect. The perfect is just to give you the simple idea of the fact that happened. But it doesn't show you in all the gory details how it happened in its full process. That's the difference between the perfect and imperfect. And that's an exegetically significant difference that makes a difference of how you preach these texts.